Hey everyone, today we pick up where we left off in the Omega Blade. Chapter 5. When Luxia woke up the next morning, the princess was curled up next to her, so she hesitated for a moment before sitting up. "Don't go," Kyle whispered, her eyes still closed. Lux looked down at her. "Last night you said your parents don't care what you do in private as long as you don't endanger yourself or the kingdom. If that's the case, what are you doing in the tournament? They know I can take care of myself. They know I can fight." Lux took a deep breath. "I haven't felt this good in a very long time. Thank you for this." Kion smiled up at her. "You don't get to be dominant very often, do you?" "Only a few times in my life. Why? Was it obvious?" "Yes, but not because you seemed inexperienced," Kion clarified. "Because you couldn't stop smiling, even when you were making me beg." Lux blushed. "I still can't believe that worked. Lucky for you, this princess likes to be dominated." Sighing, Lux laid back down and ran a hand through Kion's hair, where one of her 8 horns was missing. "May I ask what happened to your horn?" Kion looked away. "I don't like to talk about it. It's not that I don't trust you, just that I don't know you very well." Lux nodded. "I understand." There was a moment of silence. "Do you want to get breakfast before we part ways?" Lux nodded. She had entered the princess's tent the previous night knowing it would most likely be a one-off, so the question didn't surprise her. "I'd love to." Lux and Val's respective opponents that day were somehow the easiest either of them had faced in the games so far. After lunch, they made their way to Arena 1, where Arjun Skullbrook introduced Eren and a copper-skinned dragonborn woman named Galkin Adrith, and announced that no ranged weapons or enchantments would be allowed. Galkin walked out wearing chainmail with 6 metal plates on the front and back, and armed with a pair of curved swords and a pair of daggers. Eren had always had some trouble against warriors sufficiently skilled at dual-wielding. She blocked and parried 10 strikes in 5 seconds, struggling to keep track of both blades. Eventually she stumbled on uneven ground, and Galkin was able to stab her in the back. Eren's armor saved her life, but the shallow stab made her yell in pain. Putting some distance between herself and her opponent, Eren realized her trident was longer than any of Galkin's weapons. When Galkin caught up with her and attacked again, Eren adjusted her strategy, focusing on keeping Galkin at a distance. Despite the throbbing pain in her back, she was successful, and eventually she saw an opening and went for a stab. Galkin batted the trident aside, but Eren was expecting that. Rather than reset to her usual attack position, she used the momentum from the parry to spin her weapon around 180 degrees, then drove the sharpened back end into her opponent's chest between the middle pair of metal plates. Knowing how tough Dragonborn typically were, she pulled the trident out, turned it back around, and drove all 3 prongs of the head into Galkin's chest, between the middle and upper pairs of plates. Galkin stumbled back and dropped one of her swords, and 2 more stabs finally put her on the ground. "Eren Damaseth is the winner!" Arjun exclaimed. None of them had any fights for several hours, so they left to get food. Then Eren used magic to repair her armor, while the others paired up for sparring. When they returned, Leoric went down to prepare for his next fight. "Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome back Vanga the Merciless," Arjun announced. Vanga walked out in her full-plate armor, which had 45 tally marks painted in black. In addition to her flail and shield, she carried a crossbow with 2 bowstrings. "Now welcome back her opponent, Leoric Swiftguard." Leoric walked out with his bow and broadsword, but without his dagger. Nefrius was the first to cheer. "Our fighters have agreed to the use of 2 weapons of any kind," Arjun explained. "One weapon may be enchanted, but not both. The requirements for victory will be death, forfeit, or incapacitation. Failure to follow the rules will be considered forfeiture. Do you both understand?" They both gave him a thumbs up. "Excellent!" Arjun shouted. "Let the match begin!" While Leoric moved closer to get in range, Vanga fired her crossbow. Her first bolt missed, but her second hit Leoric's head and would have killed him if he wasn't wearing a helmet. Rather than take the time to reload, Vanga discarded her crossbow, then removed her flail and shield from her belt and back. Leoric fired his first arrow, and she blocked it with her shield, then started swinging her flail around and through herself as she advanced on him. Leoric's second arrow missed Vanga's head by several inches. His third and fourth arrows bounced off her armor, and his 5th arrow hit her left shoulder through a gap in her armor. Shouting in pain, she charged him at full speed, forcing him to discard his bow and draw his broadsword. He dodged and parried several attacks, waiting for an opening to get close. Before he got one, Vanga suddenly changed her angle of attack, and her flail's spiked ball hit his left thigh with a sickening crunch. "No!" Nefrius shouted. Leoric collapsed, yelling in pain, and Vanga moved to finish him off. "Yield!" he shouted. The orc woman stopped, confused. "What? Fuck!" Leoric shouted. "I yield!" The next day, Lux ducked under a swing from a warhammer. Her opponent was Kiru Jagged Skull, a minotaur man 8 inches taller than her. He had black fur and orange eyes, and he was quicker than she'd expected. She blocked a heavy blow with her shield, then struck back, slashing her opponent across his unarmored chest. He roared in pain, then slammed the handle of his hammer into her face, breaking her nose. Dazed, she jabbed at him, managing to stab the right side of his chest, but then he slammed his hammer into her head and the world went black. Lux woke up in the tent she shared with Val and Aaron, but the face she saw wasn't one of her friends. "Kion?" she asked weakly. "Welcome back," the princess said softly. "What are you doing here?" "We asked her to come," Val said from his cot. "The clerics healed your injuries, but you were still unconscious." Looking around, Lux saw Aaron sitting next to the metal tub where her trident was absorbing its water. One of Kion's guards entered the tent and handed her a flask. She thanked him in Boreatica, then turned back to Lux as he left. "Do you trust me?" Kion asked. "I think so." Lux glanced at Aaron and Val. "I don't know if my friends do, though." Aaron glanced at Val, who nodded. "What's in it?" Val asked. "Cyclovellum," Kion replied. "Boread medicine." He looked at Lux, who nodded. "Go ahead," Aaron said. Kion helped Lux drink some of the medicine, which somehow tasted both sweet and bitter. "Good girl," Kion whispered in Boreatica. Lux's cheeks turned purple. "I missed you last night," she admitted softly. Kion sighed. "I think I'd like one more night with you." Lux's eyes widened. "Really?" Kion nodded. "You gave me pleasure like no one has in half a decade. It's only right that I show you how this princess treats her lovers." Lux blushed even harder. Before she could say anything, Nefrius walked in. "Can anyone split a gold coin?" he asked. Val reached into his pocket and pulled out a bag of coins. "Do you need silver or copper, and how much do you already have?" "Silver and none," Nefrius replied. "I have all the gold from the first fight, but I only have 8 copper, and this merchant wants exact change." "Let me see," Val said, sorting through the coins. "What's this for, anyway?" "A gift for Laric." Seeing that he had 2 dozen silver, Val removed 10, handed them to the tiefling, and took 1 gold in exchange. "Thanks." Nefrius turned and left. That afternoon, Aaron, Lux, and Kion sat in the stands of Arena 2, waiting for Val's match. Nefrius was in Arena 6, having accepted a challenge from Thastic Taxan, and Laric was there supporting him. "Please welcome back Valerius Ironshade," Kira Springbender exclaimed. Val walked out, carrying his halberd and wearing his steel armor, and the crowd cheered. "And his opponent, Vanga the Merciless." Vanga walked out with her armor, flail, and shield, her chestplate still marked with 45 tallies. "Our fighters have agreed to use 1 weapon, 1 enchantment," Kira continued. "The requirements for victory are death or forfeit. Do you both understand?" "Yes," they both shouted. "Wonderful. Begin!" Although the halberd of Proteus was longer than Vanga's flail, the fact that the halberd was a 2-handed weapon meant that Val couldn't take full advantage of its reach. Forced on the defensive, he used his weapon's shaft to block the strikes he couldn't dodge. Vanga reversed her flail's direction, attacking Val from his right, and one of the chain's links ended up getting hooked on the 4-inch spike opposite the halberd's axe head. Shocked by the sheer unlikeliness of what had happened, Val yanked hard, pulling the chain taut and disarming Vanga of her flail. Her eyes widened, and she tried to grab the weapon's handle from the ground, but he dropped his halberd and used both hands to pull the flail out of reach. Growling, she charged at him, swinging her shield. Retrieving his halberd, he blocked and dodged several shield strikes, then swung downward, severing her left arm halfway between the elbow and wrist. Screaming in agony, Vanga dropped to her knees as her shield and left hand fell to the ground next to her. "You gonna yield?" Val asked, holding his weapon's spearhead near her throat. "Are you gonna make me kill you?" "I yield," Vanga growled. "But if our paths cross outside the tournament, I'll take more than just your hand." "I look forward to it." Val collected his prize money and rejoined his friends and Kion in the stands, where they were soon joined by Nefrius and Laric, the latter of whom was wearing a pin that combined 2 symbols representing elves and tieflings. "How is the loser's bracket?" Lux asked playfully. "Lost the first fight," Nefrius replied. "Won the second and third, made 35 silver. Nice." "Ladies and gentlemen," Kira announced, "Tharmand Blackstone." Tharmand walked out to thunderous applause, still unarmored but armed with a pair of daggers in addition to his axe. His opponent, Aaron Damixath. Aaron walked out in her Leviathan armor, her Xian in its sheath and her trident in her hands. The applause she received wasn't quite as loud as her opponent's, but it was still enough to bring a smile to her face. "The fighters have agreed to 2 weapons, 1 enchantment," Kira said. "The requirements for victory are forfeit, death, or incapacitation. Do you both understand?" Aaron and Tharmand both answered affirmatively. "Very good. Fight!" While Tharmand charged forward, Aaron moved at her normal walking speed. He positioned his axe for an upward strike, only to reverse it at the last second and swing down. Aaron sidestepped the attack, then jabbed with her trident, piercing his back just enough to draw blood. Growling, he slashed at her too fast for her to dodge, so she blocked the strike with her trident's shaft. A look of confusion appeared on his face, only to be replaced by determination as he followed up with several more slashes. One grazed her left thigh and scratched her armor, but she managed to block and dodge the others before striking back. Thurman blocked and parried most of Aaron's thrusts, but one managed to get through his defenses and open a shallow gash below his left armpit. "Argh!" he grunted. "Be glad we're on land," Aaron said after dodging a horizontal slash. "It's the only reason you're still in one piece." Thurman smirked. "Oh, I'm well aware of that, lass." He feigned a rightward slash, then changed directions and raised his axe for a downward strike. She raised her trident to block the strike, only for him to miss deliberately, stop his axe just above the dirt, and swing upward before she could react. The unexpected strike sent the trident of amphitrite flying over his head, and it landed several feet behind him. Erin instinctively took several steps back before drawing her sword. When Thurman closed in and attacked, she made an effort to parry the slashes she couldn't dodge instead of blocking them. She was successful at first, but before long a strike came that she had no choice but to block. Despite being swung with an amount of force well within the physical capabilities of a dwarf, the axe shattered the Gean's blade into 2 large pieces and 5 smaller shards. One shard embedded itself in his left thigh, and another hit her right side between her waist and ribs. Both fighters yelled in pain and clutched their wounds. Erin dropped the handle and ran towards her trident, avoiding Thurman's attempts to grab her. He chased after her, but the shard in his leg slowed him down. Retrieving her weapon, she turned towards him and fired a jet of water more than twice as powerful as the one she had unleashed during her fight against the Esnera Thunderhammer. Thurman was launched back, hitting the ground hard enough to break several ribs. He tried to push himself up, then collapsed. "The winner is Erin Damixeth." Erin collected her prize money and returned to the stands, where Kyle was the first to congratulate her. They all chatted for a bit, then Kira said something that made Val stop mid-sentence. "For our final match of the day, please welcome Kaylee Stoneclaw." So ends Chapter 5. That's all for now. Stay safe in these crazy times.